welcome to the Ruby Heart live stream with Soul Level Astrologer Mark Borax. My name is Marcella Eversole, and we are so grateful to be here again another week. So today we'll be delving into another chapter of Mark's new book, which is titled The Ruby Heart of the Dragon, Sun Signs for Our Times. So if any of you out there are Sagittarians or in love with Sagittarians or just interested in the sign of Sagittarius, that will be what themes we explore today. And of course, they apply to all of us. We all have a homeopathic dose of every sign in us. And before we begin, I just have a few announcements. The first is, it is with great glee that we announce that the ebook has now been released. So for any of you that have bought the ebook, we're excited to hear about it below in the comments. Just let us know if you actually got the ebook and are reading it now. This is the first time the text has gone public. Mark had shared the book with some folks to review it before it was published, and you can see some of those quotes and reviews in the book. And now this is the first time the book is going into the hands of anyone who's gotten the ebook. So anyway, we would love to hear from you. If you've gotten the ebook and are starting to read it now, you can post that in the comments below. And then for those that are waiting for the print copy of the book, it will be released on June 13th. So we are definitely looking forward to the actual tangible book being able to be distributed. So stay tuned for that. If you pre-ordered the book, it will be coming soon. And finally, our summer self-study program is going to launch next month. So if you're interested in the summer self-study program, you can contact us via the website. And I'll post this in the comments too, soullevelastrology.com, or you can also post in the comments and we'll just write you back. So with that, I would love to turn it over to my man with Saj Moon Rising to take it away today.
Thanks, Marcella. And welcome everybody to Unlimiting Yourself, Life as Vision Quest, the sign of Sagittarius, which is my favorite sign. I have a lifelong passionate love affair with Sagittarius. For me, all the signs aren't equal. I definitely favor this one, and it may be because of my Sagittarius Moon and Rising, or I don't know, maybe I would be like that way anyway. But Sag is the eternal wanderer, life as a vision quest, the search to exceed the limits of the past, the yearning inside humanity to become more than we used to be. This is very strong in me. It's very strong in many people. And thank the gods for Sagittarius, because if it wasn't for Sagittarius, that corner of the zodiac would implode with the intensity of Scorpio and the rigorousness of Capricorn. We really need Sagittarius, especially at this time on Earth, to keep us believing that the future can be better than the past. The urge to expand, the urge to share life in the kind of blissful camaraderie, like in Rivendell or Shangri-La, all of those different cultural ideas of the community of like-minded souls, where wise and strong and beautiful women and wizards and musicians share food and drink through the night for many nights on end. And I've experienced that as not just a Sagittarian wishful fantasy, but in my reality. I've experienced that state of sharing camaraderie, conversation, and music all night long for days on end, mostly at the Oregon Country Fair, which I've been going to most every summer since 1979, in the woods west of Eugene, Oregon, where 50,000 people get together to share music and open up the gates. Like my annual Woodstock, it renews my belief in the human race, which at this time in history can get kind of weathered and tinkered and torn. Sag is the indefatigable sign. It's like those inflatable punching clowns they used to sell when I was a boy in New York City in the 1950s. You would blow up this clown that was about, I don't know, 4 feet tall, and you would pound the thing in the head and it would shoot back, and then it would shoot forward and hit you in the face. Every time you hit it, it bounced back even more. That's how I think of Sagittarius. No matter how many times this sign gets knocked down, it bounces back, not to where it used to be, but even stronger. And again, thank the gods for my Saj Moon and Rising, which keep me bouncing back all throughout life, and definitely counter the more Capricorn sides of my chart. Even though I'm neither a Sag nor a Capricorn, I'm a Libra, but we each have all of the signs within us. And the part of you that is Sagittarius is absolutely wild about freedom. There needs to be a part of us that is wild about freedom, because otherwise the stresses, especially of the modern time in life, could really make us feel hopeless. But Sag is the part of you that is hungry for growth, expansion, connection, transformation, positive change. And when Sag matures is where that wild yearning for freedom transforms from its adolescent version, which is a kind of escapist freedom, such as I'll be free when I finally get away from my stupid idiot parents, or I'll be free when I finally get away from my boyfriend or my house or my wife. When Sagittarius grows a different kind of freedom that doesn't have to do with having to get out of anything. It has to do with showing up and gaining supreme presence as the very real but very magical being that you are. One without the other is lacking, because if you gain realness at the expense of magic, you're going to be a dull person. You're going to have a dull life. But if you gain magic at the expense of realness, you're going to have an escapist and ungrounded life. When you gain the freedom that comes from arriving fully in the physical plane with all your senses alive, all your faculties intact, you gain a multidimensional freedom that doesn't have to do with escaping or avoiding. It has to do with arriving. And this has a lot to do with your senses. I don't mean the 5 senses that most people think about, simply because back in ancient Greece, this guy Aristotle decided that there were 5 senses. And ever since then, everyone's been saying, yeah, there's 5 senses. Rudolf Steiner came along about 100 years ago and said, I don't think that's correct. I think there are at least 12 senses. And he associated them with the 12 signs of the zodiac. And I think Steiner was closer to the mark, though there's probably even more than that. When you start tuning into your various senses, along with sight, there's insight. Along with hearing, there's telepathy. There's a multidimensional awareness, precognizance, the ability to tune into things before they happen, to speak with the ancestors, speak with the dead, to interpret dreams, many, many different senses. When you arrive in the physical plane with all your senses alive, alert, intact, you gain a different kind of freedom. It's the freedom of arrival rather than the freedom of departure. It's the freedom of incarnation rather than the freedom of transcendence, because much of the urge for transcendence turns out to come as an escapist urge based on the idea that the physical plane isn't fully worth participating in, and we better get out of here. When Sagittarius gets strength by countering its urges to escape and instead arrives, shows up, lands, but not in a limited way, because that will drive Sagittarius crazy, in an expanded way, like the best of an acid trip or ayahuasca journey, when you are grounded and present and totally tuned in to the macrocosm. That's where Sagittarius matures. That's where Sagittarius grows its own kind of freedom. And until then, there's a lot of chomping at the bit. There's a lot of trying to bust loose, because Sag is the most adolescent sign of the zodiac. And you could see this in famous Sagittarians, especially Jim Morrison, the songwriter and singer of The Doors, whose one of his most famous early songs was Break On Through. And you could see inside Jim Morrison this hedonistic urge to break out of limitation and lead everybody else along, mixed in with a real addictive carnality, addictive sexuality, drugs, alcohol, all of which he had issues with. But if you can maintain Morrison's urge for breaking through while releasing the addictive side, the overly hedonistic side, now you're getting the best of Sagittarius and you're trimming back the worst of it. Another famous Sagittarian in history, William Blake, the 18th century visionary artist, writer, poet, who said if the fool would persist in his folly, he would become wise. And what Blake was really referring to is that it's not enough if you're a fool to just go a little bit into your foolishness. You have to go all the way in, and then you may gain wisdom. My life is really an example of this, because back in my teens, especially between 14 and 17, 18 years old, I was on fire with a Saj Moon and Rising need to burst out into the world and share with everybody the magical, wise secrets that I was privy to. And so I had many acid-like experiences at concerts, and now at age 68, I've spent the last 20 or 30 years reining in my adolescent Sagittarian explosive ego, but I've come back around full circle now to realize that the 17-year-old Mark Borax actually knew a few things that the 68-year-old Mark Borax could actually learn from, could benefit from. And because there's this power in Sagittarius, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy power, where if you really believe wholeheartedly in some beautiful, magical thing happening, that belief almost entirely by itself can conjure that thing into being. And it's not enough to only part way believe it. It's not going to work. You have to fully believe, like I was capable of in my teens. Right now, it's a lot harder for me at times to fully believe in some beautiful magical thing happening, not just for me, but for all of humanity, because I have a lot of experiential years in between my 17-year-old self and my 68-year-old self that I have to work hard to trim out of the way to regain some of that Sagittarian chutzpah. But in my new book, I dive into the Sagittarian chapter just full force, like I wasn't able to do in any of the other chapters to that extent. This is because the kind of soul level astrology that I practice isn't about talking about the signs, but embodying the signs. And the only way that I could write all of those 12 chapters over a 4-year period was to shapeshift into that sign while I was working on that chapter. And I had the most fun of all doing that with Sagittarius, because I just think it's the best sign. I'll fight anybody to the finish who argues with me about that. I'm going to insist till the day I die that Sagittarius rules. And the great part of that is that when you fully tune in to the magic that's already here, not just the elusive magic that you're always trying to get to, but when you fully tune in to the magic that's already here, you send a vibration out through the airwaves from your immediate zone all around that draws like unto like. I see this almost every summer at the Oregon Country Fair, where 50,000 people getting together for a magical festival of music in the forest for days on end makes it almost impossible to counter that belief. When you have 50,000 people walking around thinking magic happens 24 hours a day for 3, 4, 5, 6 days on end, any counter thoughts that you have to that dissolve, which made me realize I've been going to the fair since 1979. And it made me realize that walking around the world after the fair, in the 51 weeks that the fair is not happening, that Shangri-La and Brigadoon and Woodstock are not happening, you're surrounded by counter thought forms of fear and limitation, modern media thought forms now that have to do with being very afraid bad things are going to happen unless you get in line. It's really hard to counter those dominant thought forms in your psychic space. So I've learned from so many decades going to the fair, immersing myself in July, in so many people believing in love and magic, that you can't help believe in love and magic. It's very healing. It heals the body. It heals the mind. And this is the part of Sagittarius that is in each of us, though it's stronger in Sagittarians. That's the part of us that can have a really beautiful self-fulfilling prophecy. Now I'm going to check with my lovely wife, Marcella, to see if there's any comments inside the studio or outside the studio.
All right, I'm coming. Well, gosh, one of the things that you spoke that really struck me was, because I also have strong Sag, and the piece around how Sagittarians, or this theme that we're exploring around Sagittarius, of really being able to believe in that the future can be better than the past. And I love that. That's my comment. I just really love that Sag quality and feel like these times that we're living through definitely calls that part forward as a sort of necessary elixir for humanity to just really believe that the future can be better than the past. And I was kind of curious, since Rowan, when Rowan was so young, said to me, "Mom, for someone so beautiful, you really are delusional. It makes me wonder if there isn't something about that part of Sag that also can lead to being delusional.
Yeah, and it's a good question that when is the idealistic belief in something incredibly beautiful happening ungrounding and escapist and delusional, and when is it a truth spoken before everyone else has yet caught up to it? And there is no easy answer to that question. It's very similar to asking whether the experience of a medicine journey is more healing or more hallucinogenic. And it's usually some mixture of both. It's like the best of the West Coast, the best of West Coast spirituality. Oh my God, we're all beautiful. You're beautiful. I'm beautiful. She's beautiful. He's beautiful. Isn't this amazing? This is incredible. And compared to the East Coast, where Marcella and I have been living in Vermont for 15 years, though I've spent about half my life on the East Coast, half on the West Coast. It's the best of that West Coast beautiful communal spiritual mystical vibe, but blended with that East Coast groundedness and anchoring. And all right, if that's true, that something incredible and beautiful may be happening. What can we do during the course of our lives, our months and our years, to anchor that, to ground that, to live up to that, to honor that, to respect that, to work for that, rather than just paying lip service, which is the worst of the West Coast communal thing?
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I love that. And then I was also curious, that clown example that you were giving, um, I thought illustrated a certain side that you didn't really go into much, but I was kind of curious if you wanted to share a bit of your perspectives around the sort of fiery part of Sag that might get entangled in different kinds of adversarial um, pieces, or how does that play out for this particular fire sign
Well,
in your eyes?
there's a rebelliousness in Sagittarius, but mostly it's rebelling against um, the strictures of normalcy, because normality at this time on Earth has become incredibly abnormal. Millions and millions of people are walking through a trance state. They're in a mass hypnosis, and uh, and that state set in after the 1960s revolution scared the shit out of repressive cultural and governmental forces, and they struck back with a vengeance because they were scared shitless that love was going to happen. And love is the most threatening thing to the repressive government forces and the intelligence agencies and the corporations. They don't want love breaking out between blacks and whites. They don't want love breaking out between people of different nations and different countries. It doesn't serve the master controlling interests of the oligarchy to have people parading down the streets holding hands. And so there is a Sagittarian rebelliousness, but mostly what it's really wanting to rebel against is the artificial limitations that have become all too normal. Even back in the 18th century, William Blake was rebelling like crazy against that. He was speaking out against the church. He was attacking the institution of slavery. And, this was long before his time. He was making a lot of waves. And oftentimes that Sagittarian need to rebel is ahead of its time, or it creates a lot of pushback. Um, Blake was never imprisoned or tortured, the way people like Galileo had to spend his life in house arrest for daring to say that the earth revolves around the sun instead of the sun revolving around the earth, like the church said. Galileo wasn't a Sagittarius, but it's that Sagittarian rebelliousness where we really need the archer to fire those flaming arrows towards something greater and brighter and freer. Yeah, they can get themselves in trouble for it, but Sagittarius really grows and gains wisdom and maturity when, instead of just rebelling for no reason at all, it has good, solid reasons of why it's striking back.
I love that. Thank you. I just have one other question, really, which kind of furthers this idea that you were going into about the divisiveness of these times. And maybe this is my sort of Blake quality of being the eternal. Oh goodness, we lost our soul level astrologer, Mark Borax. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but I'll just continue, and then I'll have to weave him back in when he comes in. But the comment question that I had. Welcome back.
Yeah, I got kicked off again.
Yeah, you did. Are you trying to be a Sagittarian escapist? Come on, show up with your full presence. Practice what you preach.
Okay. Here I am, everybody. I got rid of her, but maybe she wants to come back in. So let's see.
Oh, you. So
Okay.
This might be a foolish question, but while you were speaking about the whole visionary part of Sag, in contrast to the divisiveness of these times, it really made me wonder, from the perspective of vision, how does the Sag vision unify? So, like, you lived through the 60s. You might have been a little young, but you lived through the 60s. And I feel like sometimes I'm witnessing a whole other 60s happen, only this time it's happening through a different channel, like, the truckers protest and these things that people on the left see that as being so negative through the eyes that they're seeing it, just like a lot of the conservative folks saw the 60s and the hippie revolution as really negative in terms of busting open traditional values. There feels like there's Sag energy in there. And I just wondered if you might want to complete today by talking about perhaps like the power of the visionary unifying aspect of Sag in the way you see it.
Well, yeah, you need chutzpah. You really need to feel that something beautiful can happen rather than going along with the crowd. Far too many of the current liberals and so-called leftists have left their 1960s chutzpah behind. Many of the musicians who really led us then as role models have bought into the modern media lies lock, stock, and barrel. And it really takes a deep willingness to challenge the system and not believe the mainstream media, not listen to the dominant paradigm that's all too often parroted now by so-called liberals. In many ways, the conservatives have become more liberal than the liberals, and the liberals have become more conservative than the conservatives. And the Sagittarian part of that we need back again, that we had in the 1960s, was just the willingness to jump out of all boxes, even the boxes of your neighbors and your friends and your mates. So, that's my spirit of inviting and summoning the Sagittarius in all of us to come back again.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right, thanks everyone for joining us.
Yeah, and I just want to remind everyone, the Summer Self-Study Program is the entry into a 3-year program where I teach you how to read birth charts on a magical soul level. Take care, everybody, and thank you.